Guys, I'm a little worried that we're going to have a funeral here for JavaScript pretty soon. And to be honest with you guys, I don't think that JavaScript is the only language that shares this problem. Let's discuss. So we've all either learned to code already or are in the process of learning to code. And while doing that, we've learned a lot of different things. We learned different languages. We learned what is good to use here versus what is good to use there. Aside from that, one of the biggest things that we spend our time doing in this industry is kind of obsessing over, hey, what is the coolest, newest, flashiest, trendiest thing out there? What is going to give us the best ROI? What's going to get us the most employment? What are all the big companies looking at? Which of these technologies can I use when I'm developing that has all the bells and whistles? What's going to do most of the stuff for me? As technologies come and go, like we adjust, right? We adjust, we pick up a new language, we get good at it, and then we repeat that process over and over again. And as you probably already know, software development and being a developer, this industry as a whole, you kind of have to take this forever promise to yourself and to everyone else that you're going to stay relevant and continue learning, because if you don't stay relevant, well, then you're irrelevant, right? And then you're going to have a hard time keeping up with everyone else. And I know I was talking about JavaScript, and hold on, we're going to get there. Let me make this point because you'll understand better. And that point is simply that computer software has been free riding or freeloading off of computer hardware, and it's been doing that for a couple of decades now. So what exactly does that mean? What do I mean by that? Well, over the years, we've had a lot of incredible advancements in hardware technology. And that just really translates to computers to continually getting faster and faster. Like the computer speed of computation has increased drastically over time. In reality, guys, software gets or has gotten quote unquote better, and I'm using quotes for a reason, quote unquote better, because it has been using better hardware to run on top of. And the advancements that we've had in hardware tech in the last couple of years, guys, it really actually has been very, very drastic and pretty incredible. I don't even really understand it. I hardly understand. I understand very little about hardware. Okay, guys. And in order for you to actually be able to understand how advanced it actually has gotten, you'd have to know a whole lot more about it than me. And those people can tell you, yeah, we've made some pretty drastic advancements with that stuff in the last couple decades. But the truth is, software itself, it's gotten better because it has better hardware components to run on top of, okay? And most of the stuff that we use every single day is dependent on things like machine learning and similar things like that. A simple example of this is one of the 1,000 apps out there that does stuff so any one of those apps that takes your face and turns it into someone else's face, or those apps that can take your picture and make you talk, and you give it some kind of text and it'll start making you sing a song. You guys know what I'm talking about? The amount of software in there that's doing work, that's doing some lifting, is incredibly minuscule compared to all the stuff, or rather all the heavy lifting that the hardware is doing in the back end. So stuff like loading the bitmap of your face and continuously looking for responses or having to respond to user input and events. So software has improved over time, but just not as much as the actual hardware that it's running on top of. And, maybe it might not have improved as much as it has if that was not the case. One simple node project, you could very well need 1,000 plus dependencies for. And don't get me wrong, Node is cool and all. Node's really cool, and you can do some amazing stuff with it. But after the last few years of just seeing almost anything and everything that has some kind of large reliance or dependency on something else or someone else, and I'm actually not talking about just code here, okay? Anything that has had some kind of large reliance on something or someone else, either just completely fail or have some kind of close call crisis, I'm really starting to question the longevity and the future of some of these things. So again, on thinking about the future, things like Node that has all these has this massive amount of dependencies on other things on top of the already underlying existing dependencies that we have in software. It really just makes me just like want to ask, like, why are we doing this? Why is it this way? On top of that, if you guys saw the video that I did titled "GitHub is Lying to You," then I think this would bother you just a little bit more too. Another thing about Node that kind of like susses me out a little bit is, and JavaScript in general too, is that it's being used in a lot of places for not for its intended original purpose. And that's kind of strange, right? Now, you can make a lot of arguments against what I'm about to say, but let's just take a step back in time here real quick. The year, 1995. And Brandon Ike, when he made JavaScript, and hopefully I'll throw this quote up on the screen so you guys can see it, but I created JavaScript to essentially fill in the needs. He called it, my friends, a glue language used by informal programmers and designers to allow programmers to use JavaScript to put together components and automate interactions. So basically, to make that a little bit less complicated, the key here is to put together components and automate interactions, okay? So basically, like to make effects on your website in 2006, which is exactly what it was used for back in the day, you know? Like having cool effects on your website in 2006 and like simple button on-click events and things like that. To be honest with you guys, like most of the heavy lifting for websites or web apps, it was really originally intended to be used by like PHP or use PHP in order to do that heavy lifting. But its purpose, guys, it was not to have an entire framework like jammed into it and bloated with a bunch of dependencies that just work TM, okay? And I think that this over complexity, my friends, well, I don't think it's definitely not just JavaScript. It's everywhere now, but I believe that this over complexity kind of stems from my fellow millennials whom have basically just spearheaded the industry since 2013. I know I'm starting to sound like a boomer in the woods. I get it. I've been there too. I used to think like that as well. And, you know, starting in the beginning of my career, I used to think a lot of my older predecessors were just boomers TM and who just didn't get current thing. They didn't gravitate towards the current thing that was flashy, and that they should try to learn more. And you know, they're just old, and you know they might not ever get it. But guys, honestly, after spending a lot of time in the industry, I'm starting to realize that like I don't hold a candle to most of these older guys who were back coding in like the 2000s. Like they had legitimate hurdles to overcome, and they were held to a pretty rigorous standard. It's true. So devs, my friends, guys, we need to optimize. We need to optimize and stop abusing not just our reliance on hardware, but just reliance on external dependencies in general, as much as we can. Now, obviously, right now, you know, we're not going to start just like writing bash scripts to do everything. I don't know. But the more that we can get away from doing that, the better I think the future is going to be for everything software related, period. Okay. And if this decade, guys, ends out the way that it has started, if it just continues the way that it started, then, you know, at the end of it, if the poop hits the fan, then I fear that we are all going to have some serious hurdles to go overcome, like the guys did back in the 2000s when they were developing. And it's probably going to be worse, and it's going to be self-inflicted. So take that into consideration, okay? What am I going to do? My friends, what am I going to do about it myself, since I sat here and complained like an old boomer in the woods? Well, because of this, guys, I have actually decided to take up things that like use WebAssembly. I'm going to start learning things like Rust. For example, Rust is literally on my agenda of things to learn. So, you know, if this information to you guys, if it is concerning to you too, and maybe, you know, you're looking into the future and you're just wondering, hey, like this just seems like a giant mess and then it might not work out like that, then And or maybe you literally just want to just help contribute to a less bloated internet, or really just a less bloated software filled world in general, then you can do the same. And if not, whatever. Learn to code, learn to change your entire self-custody, your own freaking crypto, and give a like if you appreciate it. If you didn't appreciate it, well, I don't know what to tell you. Later.